Hello and welcome to the Leadership Link. Today we're going to be talking all about how tech leadership is much more about people than it is about tech. And with me to chat about that, I have Anna. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Finishing up the week very slowly, but I'm good. What about you?
I am good, thank you. Just saying to you before, it's Friday, but it's also the end of a week that I have not done everything that I needed to do. So it's going to be a busy rest of the day, I think. But no, I am good, thank you. I'm
Good
good.
luck with
So
that.
thank you. So I've seen loads of your content on LinkedIn and been kind of chatting to you for a little while. So I'm assuming some people would have at least seen your name. I guess tell me a little bit about you and kind of what you're working on at the moment and your background, just for kind of a bit of reference there.
Sure. I've been in tech for more than 10 years now. I had like you would call a straightforward path to software engineering. I got my bachelor degree in computer science, and I went from there from being a software developer. And then quickly I grown into a leadership role. So I had different roles, tech lead, engineering manager. And for the past 3 years, I've been focusing and been running my own business as a career coach in tech. So I've been focusing on supporting people leveling up in their tech careers. That also involves training tech leads in building high performing teams, which is the part that I'm most passionate about. And I'm doing a couple of different things, working with people on the individual level, building courses, and working with different organizations to help their tech leads level up in their skills. So that's pretty much it in a
Amazing.
short version.
Yeah, for sure. And how did you kind of land on tech leads as being your main area of, I guess, interest or kind of where you thought was best use of your time?
I think since I started to get a little bit more traction in my role as a software developer, when I became a senior, I kind of started to get access to different people and to see the type of impact that I can have with the things that we are building. And so very quickly, I got very interested in having a different type of impact. That means at the team level. So I was very quickly I realized I'm more curious in driving results as a team or building something together than my individual, how many lines of code I'm developing or working with the latest technology. So that basically at that point meant for me going towards a tech lead role. And so I worked towards that. I actually changed companies for one that allowed me they build a growth plan for me to develop into the tech lead role. And so I became a tech lead because I'm very motivated and driven by building something as a team. I feel like there's no better reward than when you see these people together working to the same goal and getting results. And so, yeah, that's basically where the passion is coming from. And I've extrapolated that into working with other tech leads because I feel that's where I can have the biggest impact in the tech industry by helping tech leads like lead the way they want and the way their teams needs them to lead. I think is the best way to have the impact that I want in the tech industry.
Yeah, fantastic. And obviously, we're talking about the non-technical skills that you kind of need to develop as a tech leader. So I was reading your article, and you're obviously talking about kind of if your team's struggling to make decisions, like it's not an issue with your team, it's an issue with your decision making process. And if you've got too much tech debt, it's because you haven't prioritized it, and so people aren't prioritizing it because it's not a priority for your team. So it's really interesting to think about. And you obviously outlined kind of what you put as the seven kind of top technical, non-technical skills that you need to develop. So I'd love to go through those with you. And first one's time management. And I think, as I said to you, I'm probably not the best person to recommend because I have 1,006 things that I need to do today, which I can probably do about three of. So talk to me about time management and your experience with time management and helping other people and hopefully me figure out time management.
First thing, I don't think you ever figure out completely time management because even when you figure it out, something changes your context, your role, your responsibility. So it's a continuous process. But I do think that there are ways that you can make it easier. And working with over 100 tech leads in the past 2 years, one thing that I've noticed is that they all struggle with time management. And any person in a tech leadership role, they have this problem. And mostly it's because they are not sure where to focus. And so they focus on everything. It's very common that when you're leading a team, everybody comes to you, like the stakeholders, the team, with different priorities that they think they are important. So it's up to you to actually understand where do you put your focus in order to bring the most value, and understand that you're never going to be able to keep everyone happy. So I think that's the first thing that will help with your time management, letting go of the idea that you're not going to disappoint someone in the process, and that's okay, because we're all people, and we're doing our best in the process. So I do have a process, and I have some tools that I recommend people and that I use to help people get a hold of their time. Like, the idea is to get them to a place where they feel like they have more control, more than anything, over their time. Like you were saying before, it's about not having that feeling at the end of the week that, okay, I don't know where my days went, I don't know what happened today, I'm not sure what I achieved. So getting a little bit more in control of it. The first secret is through visualization. So if it's not clear to you what are you working on, if you're not visualizing clearly, it's really hard to understand where exactly your time goes, and if you're actually focusing on the right thing. So first thing, what I start with tech leads is, for example, using the Eisenhower matrix. It's a tool that you can use to visualize your task in quadrants. So the idea of it, more like the value of it, it's in the conversation that comes after, because you start wondering, okay, where do I spend the most of my time? Why am I staying more in this quadrant, and how if I want to move from one to the other? But also it's forcing you to think about things that maybe you don't have to take care of, right? So I think I found that's where people struggle the most with letting go of things. And this kind of visualization forces you to see that you only have a certain amount of time in the day, and that you will have to make some decisions. So we start that process of asking the questions and planning, instead of just going with the flow and depending on other people's priorities. So that's where I would start.
Sure.
Does that
And I
make
get,
sense?
yeah, yeah, no, I think a lot of it is about becoming proactive with your time rather than reactive, right? And actually
Hmm.
being like, this is where I want to be spending my time this week, rather than just dealing with stuff as it comes in. Um, and I spoke to Gregor, who I believe you know, and he blocks off time in his diary, like to make sure that no one comes to him unless stuff is super urgent, and like that is like during those hours, people know that he isn't really available for like quick questions and stuff like that. And I think looking at your whole week and splitting it down into hours of like, what am I going to be doing and all of that, I think is huge. And it's also, I read something the other day. It's about a lot of being a leader is figuring out what do what tasks need your specific brain to do, like, and whether that's you need to hire someone else to do it or get someone else to do it. It's actually figuring out like there might be stuff that you enjoy doing that anyone else in your business could do, like, but what do you need to be doing? Because it might be you have a particular set of experience, or like you're the only one that can make these types of decisions, or anything like that. So I think that really struck a chord with me of like, what are you doing that no one else could do, and they need to be your priorities, and probably you just need to be doing more of that. And as we'll get onto the second point, delegating a lot of the rest of the stuff and finding other people to do it, right? So um leading on quite nicely, delegation, something that I feel like I'm definitely getting better at, but I think it's something that, particularly as a new leader, people kind of struggle with. And like you said, a lot of it is about letting go, and like that lack of control, as you kind of do that. So, how do you help people into effective delegation?
So everything that you mentioned, it applies completely, and I think that's where I will answer your question in a little bit. So the problem starts when people realize they have a problem with delegation, when actually they cannot manage their time anymore, right? So it's what I've noticed usually is that delegation comes as a solution to a problem leaders have, more than something that I want to do. which is fine. For me, the motivation on why you're starting to doing the right strategies, it's not as important as the behavior that you're using. So in this case, basically starting from the time management topic, you realize very quickly that you cannot do everything. Once you start visualizing a big part of the quadrant, okay, these are things that, like you said, you might like to do, or you're good at, but actually other people can do it or they can grow into it and they don't necessarily require your expertise. So that might be the space where you delegate. And so how do I help people get into that space? Once you realize you have a problem, it's identifying the reason why you might hold back from delegating. The ones that you mentioned about the fear of letting go, that's or losing control, that's one of the most common ones that I identified. But there are others, like might be the fear of losing credit for the work that you're doing, or there might be some tasks that you really like to do, right? Even if they take a lot of your space, but you just like doing them, right? And that's something maybe harder to let go of. And the third part is because sometimes you just feel like it's easier for you to do it than teaching someone else to do it. So I'm trying to say it's way easier to solve the problem when you identify exactly what's your main motivation, or sorry, your main reason why you're holding back from delegation. And from that point on, you can come up with different solutions. And there is a process there. I think once you realize, okay, I need to start delegating more, you start thinking about, like, I have like a 5-step process for delegating. You start thinking about the what, how do you come up with things to delegate. If you have the matrix from before, that's a great place to start, because you're already going to have some ideas, things you don't have to do, things others can do, things you don't want to do. That's a great way to start, but to delegate. Second is identifying the who. So who can you give it to? There are different ways to finding the person you're delegating to. You can start by just thinking who you think would be a right person for it, and start talking to them and see if it's something that they are interested in. You cannot just dump something on someone. This is very important, right? Just because you think, okay, they are a perfect match and they can do it, doesn't mean you can just dump it on them. You can also identify the who by just saying, hey, I need help with this. Who would like to help me? You would be surprised how many people would jump in. Then the third step, it's about choosing the right strategy. So based on the level of expertise people have, you might have to have a more involved approach in delegation or less involved, right? So you will have to assess that on how much support they need in the process, and you can agree with them from the beginning on how, like, when were you going to check in and how are you going to be doing things together. This removes a lot of the pressure of you not knowing, should I ask, is this too much? So setting the expectations on the process on how you're going to be working together. And last but not least, very important, setting the right, like, making it clear to them, what do you expect, right? Because so agreeing on the results, I need you to do this, doesn't give you much, because me doing this or you doing this, it might come up to a different result, which is happen very often when people get disappointed in the delegation process. Oh, this is not what I wanted, or this is not how I would done it, which is a tricky one, because once you let go of the task, that it might come up differently, and that's okay. But if you make that goal of what are we trying to achieve clear, it removes a lot of the problems of this that you usually find at the end of the process.
Sure. And like, I think a lot of that really resonates. And I think when we started the business, like I think the biggest one for us is my co-founder did a lot of our finance, like operations work. And
Mm-hmm.
like he had just done it for so long that he was just the person, he knew everything. It was just easier for him to do it. And like whether it was outsourcing it or bringing someone in-house, like there was that initial hurdle of I've got to teach someone, like, and it, like, as much as it was probably eating away like half of his week, he didn't want to spend 2 weeks like actually knowledge sharing and being like, this is how we do this is how we do this, and this is how we do this. And then also, like you said, that control of like he does it how he likes it. And like, would someone else be able to do it in exactly the same way? Like, probably not. But if it freed up half of his week and someone else can go and do that, he didn't need to be doing it. He's not experienced in finance and operations and things like that. It was just he knew how to do it and felt like at the time it was easier for him to just carry on doing it. So that was a big thing for us to actually go through that. And I think like another interesting point that you made was actually how you delegate things to people. Like I feel like it could be quite like almost like jarring to be like, I don't want to do this, you're doing this now. Like that might that must be kind of like, well, I don't want to do that either. Like if it's something that you don't want to be spending your time, like why would I want to do that? Whereas I feel like particularly as like an engineering leader, there must be tasks that everyone below you or a lot of the people below you are probably looking to take more responsibility and like level up their own careers. And even if it's something that you don't want to do, there's probably someone there that will jump at the chance for more responsibility and to ultimately make their manager's life easier. Like that, like your manager's going to remember that you're the person that did that and to take responsibility for something. So it does seem like a really good way of actually delegating in terms of figuring out who, if there's someone who wants to do it first and foremost, right?
And sometimes, like, there might be cases when no one wants to do the task, and that happens. What I found very useful in that situation is that you kind of use the team effect, and it's like we are on all of this together. We can maybe rotate on it. That works greatly because everybody feels like they share the pain and they share the gain. But you also, as a leader, you're gonna have to be part of that rotation, right? That means sharing the pain, but just saying like it's not it's there's always a solution if you are actually vulnerable and sharing with people the need that you have in regards to the things that needs to be get done.
I love that. I never thought about that as an idea actually, like sharing something between all of you, but including yourself. Like that's a really good idea. And still, if you're sharing it between 10 of you, it takes a tenth of your time, even though you're still doing a bit of it. Like you've got the other 90% of your time, and everyone kind of understands and kind of mucks in. I really like that. So number three that I picked up from your article was kind of group conversation facilitation. So what do you mean by that?
So, I mean, I think the best place to be when you're making decision as a team is the consensus decision making strategy, where basically everybody just gets to a point in the conversation or like, I think we are on the same page. No one has to say it out loud, like, okay, we have to do this, or no one has to take ownership over the conversation. It just kind of develops that everybody goes in the same space. And I think that's hard to achieve, and sometimes you might have to take like different approaches when making the decisions as a leader in order to move things forward. But I believe that in order to get or to have as an aim that consensus agreement, the best way to do that is by developing your facilitation skills and the group facilitation skills. So what do I mean by that? Do I mean it's basically applying some simple principles. When you have to make a decision, make sure you involve everyone. Second, make sure everyone has the space to voice their opinions. That might mean that you might need different ways of gathering input, anonymously or not. That might mean that you would need to silence some loud voices in the conversation in order to ensure everybody has the space to speak. That might mean that you'll have to bring people back from them derailing, because the bigger the solution or the problem, the more they will gonna derail in everything. So the ability to bring them back on what are we trying to achieve in the conversation, and leaving things on the side by using a parking lot, by using a risk board, things like that, they all are going to help you into that decision making. And the group facilitation, it's a I believe that's the skill that is going to get you there. And it's the same skills that you would apply as a facilitator in a retro, right? Because also there you're trying to get to some topics and get to some actions. And it requires a lot of, I believe it requires a lot of effort to keep a group on track. And there are different tricks like this that you can develop and get better at. And they will enable your team like massively into going in the right direction, and will remove a lot of pain from your side of having those endless conversations or coming back to the same topic because like you feel you're not moving forward. It will take a little bit of courage, I need to say that, right? Like jumping in, cutting people off, giving feedback. There's a lot of it in of things that you can do after into addressing maybe some, for example, loud voices in the team. But it's definitely going to pay off in the long run, and people are going to be thankful for it because no one wants to be in a painful meeting.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like obviously everyone wants to, there's a massive thing about limiting the amount of times that people spend in meetings, and trying to make sure that people aren't having pointless meetings and stuff like that. But that, on the flip side, that means that if there's less meetings, every meeting that you have needs to be more effective, right? And if the 70% of every meeting is people just talking over each other and like arguing with each other and stuff like that, and you've got no ability to moderate that, like it makes them a real waste of time, for everyone, and they're like real missed opportunities. And I feel like you said, it's a blend between telling people, brilliant, we've had your idea, like let's listen to someone else, and like quieting like louder people, but also being able to get people that aren't comfortable in giving their opinion to speak up, and making sure people have the right amount of time to speak and how you do it. Because I've certainly had meetings before where I've just jumped on and I've been like, so what does everyone think? And some people will sit there and say absolutely nothing, and like they might have loads of ideas but don't feel comfortable saying them, or they might just be happy to go along with the flow. And there's always, if you have something like that, there's always one, maybe two people that are like loud and like voicing their opinions. And you might hear two opinions, but you don't hear the other ones. And like really being able to manage, and like having a structure behind doing that seems very important.
It definitely is. And again, there are tricks that you can use. It's not just hoping for the best. And just want to emphasize on what you just said. Just because you're asking people to give you their opinion doesn't mean they will. You have to create a space where that happens. And that takes continuous time. It's not going to happen in one meeting. So it's a process. I just want to say that. But it's going to have an impact on all and everything the team does together, because that trust and that safe space that you're creating, it's going to apply and you're going to have the impact in everything that you are building as a team.
Yeah, for sure. Because they need to see someone else give their opinion and not be like completely shut down. And they need to, maybe people take slightly more time to think about their opinions so that they can articulate them correctly, like in the meeting. So it might be like, we're going to have this meeting tomorrow. Like, if anyone has any ideas, please bring them up. And then they see a couple of other people share them, and be like, oh, that went well, I'll bring one up next time. Like you said, you can't just be like, right, we're going to have a great conversation today, and like all of a sudden everyone like contribute. The people need to see it happen successfully, to believe that it can happen successfully, and so on, right? So um
Sorry, it's just a quick one. Sometimes as a leader, it might just like as a great leader, it might just mean that you accept that you don't have the skills yet. And you might bring someone in that is able to do the facilitation group, and lead the conversation. I believe that's also a very good strategy. So you can learn from that person until you develop the skills. You can still match the goals and show that you care and create that space by bringing someone in that is maybe more skillful into this aspect. So I think that's also because I know there's a lot of pressure that you as a leader now you have to develop all of this, right? I'm just saying, as we are discussing before, is the delegation. Sometimes you might have to bring someone in, and that's okay. There's a process there also for you to grow.
Yeah, for sure. And particularly, like you said, if it's a meeting like once a week, or like a bi-weekly meeting or something like that, to ask like your manager or someone from a different team to like come in and facilitate the conversation. Like, if they've got more experience doing it, ultimately you're going to get out of it what you want from that meeting, like importantly. But also, like you said, you can be like, oh, so that's what they said, that's how they did it, rather than just like winging it. Like actually being able to almost like shadow someone, and have someone facilitate the conversation. You get both. You get the conversation that you wanted to happen, and you get an effective result out of it, and also you get to learn from someone that has more experience than you doing it, right? So you don't just have to complete
Exactly.
trial by fire, and sort of wing it. So I guess off the back of that, and one of the points that I like you saying before, if your team's struggling to make decisions, it's because you don't have a decision making process like agreed. So decision making, like how do you implement like a good decision making process within your team?
I mean, so like I said before, my preferred decision making process is the consensus one. I also think it's really hard to achieve, and it really depends a lot on the maturity of the team. How long you've been together, how is your trust, how is your dynamics between the team members. But there are definitely different decision making strategies that you can take as a leader. There are some of them go more towards like consensus made, and some of them go very to the unilateral decision making, which is you as a leader come in and say, this is what we're gonna do, with very little regard of what the team thinks. And I mean, I think we all know that doesn't take you very far. And everyone that is trying it can see that this doesn't take you very far, because the problem is, even if it's the best solution or the best idea, if people don't have a space to voice their opinions, they're not going to completely commit to whatever it is that you're defining. So the space of, sometimes you might already have the decision, or everybody's going in the same direction, but having a conversation about it, or where everybody can voice their opinions or worries about it, it's going to make them way more committed to whatever it is that you're building. And actually, that's, I think, the main goal, at least in for me as a leader. That's the main goal when making decisions, is that the team is on board, even if they don't fully agree. So that doesn't mean I'm gonna sit and wait for everyone in the team to be on board with the idea, even if they are very the space where you want to get is to say, okay, we covered your worries, I understand, but are you okay, given the fact that we are considering this risk, we are moving forward? And they're saying yes, and let's see how it goes. So what I'm trying to say is, the decision making is just basically being able to move forward. If the team is able to move forward, even if it's not the best decision, sometimes I tell people, look, this might go really wrong, and that's okay. Like, just saying that, I find it so amazingly, it has an amazing impact on the team, because they feel like the pressure is going off. It's like, okay, we are in it together. There's a possibility it goes wrong, but we just have to go forward, and we're going in it, and we're gonna adapt to it. So yeah, I think those are the strategies. And there's something in the middle that I found as a leader, when they're like, you're gathering inputs from the team, but after a lot of conversation, or because of time pressure, that's usually the problem, you have to make a decision. I was in position where I just had to make a decision, because there was no more time to discuss more, to go back and forward more. I think the idea is, like you said before, it would be great if you would have an agreed process of decision making with your team, and try to follow that as much as possible, keeping in mind that there are situations where you might have to go off rails of that. But just when you're starting with a new team, just bringing it up and saying, hey, how do you want to make decisions? We can discuss it together. I also find a lot of people in the beginning of their journey, they expect you as a leader to be telling them what to do. I found that very surprising, that when you ask for people what do they need from you, you kind of find that line. But just having that open conversation, even making them aware about all of these types of decision making that you might be in the position to take them, is going to remove a lot of the risks of you ending up in a position where they get disappointed by the way you make decisions. Does
For
this answer
sure.
your question? I think I went a little bit back and forth
No.
into different things, but I hope I
No,
tackled it.
no, it's really good, and I think it's like you said, just having a process in place, like, is the start, right? And you probably want to tweak that over time, but and kind of discuss that with your team. But having this is how we make decisions. So it might be that you give three options, everyone votes on which option, and then you take a consensus. Or, like, you might like to hear everyone's opinion on each option, but you as the leader might still choose the one that you think is best. Or everyone, like, there aren't any assigned options. Everyone can email you the day before the meeting and be like, what's your opinion? And we'll discuss them all on the meeting. But as long as you have, like, a way of doing it, then everyone's in charge of it. And then ultimately at the end, like you said, it's your decision. Like, it's your job to make that decision. You involving the team is a great thing, and you'll get more buy-in, and ultimately you might make a better decision because you've involved the team and they come from different backgrounds and perspectives and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, it's your decision. And like you said, owning that decision and being like, so we're going with this. Like, it, yeah, I get your point. It might go wrong. Like, and I accept that it could go wrong, but this is the decision. We've gone through the process that we had agreed. This is the decision that we've come to, and now we're running with it. And if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. And I think that's ultimately getting to that decision is the important point. But I think involving people and going through like an agreed process is a huge thing for people to then accept. Oh well, at least we voted on it. Like I lost. Like what can I say? Like we voted on it, we discussed it. Like it wasn't my decision. Whereas if you just turn up to a meeting and go, by the way, we were deciding in your example between frameworks, I've decided we're going with this. Like thank you for your time. Like people won't feel heard, won't feel respected, and they won't feel like they've got their voice across, even though it's the same result.
Definitely. I mean, what you shared, the democratic approach where people vote, I think it's one of the most used approaches for tech teams to make decisions. And I think it works 90% of the cases, and everybody seems to be happy with it. But there is this sweet spot where I'm always trying to get the team, which is okay. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. But yes, at the end of the day, like you said, it comes back to you. You are going to be accountable for the decision. So everybody is responsible. I always like to make this distinction because people use these words interchangeably. But I think like you're accountable means that when shit hits the fan, you're going to be the first one being hit, you know?
Yeah.
Everybody is responsible means everybody's responsible for doing the work, but you're going to have to respond if something goes definitely wrong. So definitely you'll have to make sure that whatever you're signing up for, you're on board with it.
I love that. When shit hits the fan, you'll be the first one that gets it. Everyone else will get hit a little bit, but like mainly you.
Exactly.
Oh, so going on to the next point then, feedback. I think this is a quite a big one to kind of cover. But how are you talking about like 360-degree feedback where people are feeding back to you as well, or is this mainly feedback to the team as to kind of their performance and how they're doing, or is it kind of all manners of feedback?
I mean, when I'm referring to feedback, I believe that's something that should be part of the team culture as a daily, weekly basis. It's not something, when I think about feedback, it's not something you do once a year when the performance review comes. It's not something that you use only when things go wrong, because very often people, when they think about feedback, is just constructive feedback, something that I want to tell you you're doing wrong. So it's about the behavior in the day to day that it regards to free feedback that helps people grow. I believe it's the best tool we have these days to grow as people. That's it. You know, getting the perspective from someone else on what we're doing well, what we're doing wrong, and adapting to that if we want. I think that's the best way to grow. And so when I talk about feedback, I refer to I in my teams, I try to incorporate it as soon as possible in the team. That means by me starting practicing it with one-on-ones, ensuring there are spaces where people have the space to do that. For example, one simple exercise I run, I call them speedbacks. I learned this in ThoughtWorks. So it's a great way to start your team to get into the mood of doing feedback. It's a very short exercise, 1 hour. You get everybody in the room and everybody gets feedback to everyone with a clear structure up front. So what I'm trying to say is I think there's a lot of value in it, and the beauty comes from having people doing this continuously. So that means at the end of a big, I don't know, of a big delivery or something happening, people have that conversation. But it's also as simple as just me seeing someone doing a good job and going and telling them in that day. The timely it is, the best it is, right? The more you wait to give feedback, the more it loses its value. If I tell you, oh, you remember 6 months ago when you did this thing? Well, no one cares, right? So it needs to be timely, it needs to be at that point, and it needs to be in all ranges from, okay, you're done really well this presentation, to okay, I feel like I felt disrespected at this point when you did this, so I would like for us to address this. As a leader, one-on-ones, I found it is the easiest place to start developing this culture, by showing people, by acting as an example and showing people how to do it, but also making sure that one-on-ones have a space in the structure where feedback can be given, and you asking for it specifically and showing them, okay, how do you expect feedback to happen? So I think that's how I look at it, at feedback. I'm a big fan of it, right? So I can talk about it all day. I know we don't have that much time, but I do believe it's a daily tool that teams are missing out on and struggle a lot with in when it comes to growth.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the one of the biggest things there is that you said half of it is kind of a culture of feedback, and then also similar to decision making, it's kind of like having the processes in place so people know
Mm.
the correct channels to give feedback as well. So like you said, you don't want people telling people that they're doing a terrible job, like out in the middle of the office or in like a team meeting and things like that. But you might want people praising people publicly, or like, do you know what I mean? So you need to kind of implement both a culture where feedback is the norm, but also having places where people know that they should be giving that feedback, and places that they feel safe to. And we're going to go more into one-on-ones in a second, but I think they probably are the best place to start, right? Like actually having a place, and they can give, you're having a one-on-one with someone that works for you. They can give, you can give feedback to them, they can give feedback to you as a manager, they can give feedback as to other people on the team, and like it's a safe space between the two of you. But also you need to create that safe space where they feel like that's the norm. And I feel like the majority of one-on-ones are just direct feedback, like to the person, and that's it. And like I've tried it before, and like people talk about 360-degree feedback and stuff like that, and it's something that we have here, but people are always hesitant to give true feedback like upwards. So I feel like it's quite hard to create that kind of culture where people feel like comfortable like giving feedback to you as like a leader.
Definitely. I mean, I have a whole article on this. I think it's one of the, like you said, one of the things leaders struggle with. The leaders that care about, they feel when their team is, it's not telling them their constructive feedback. And I think that's a problem. If you cannot, that's a sign that the right trust, it's not in the team. And so there are different things in which you can trigger that. The one that I found more effective is vulnerability. Starting to tell people, like admitting in front of a group of your team that you don't know things, like just saying, I don't know, I have to check, instead of trying to keep up the appearances that you have it all together. Admitting when you're struggling, like asking for help with the delegation topic that we discussed before. But even just like a simple way is just telling people, look, I know I haven't handled this situation well. Like you pick a situation that you know you didn't handle well, and you bring it up as a topic, and you ask people, how do you feel I've done in that situation? It's definitely, it's not going to be good, because you know you messed up, right? So that's a great way to trigger it. And so I found that to be very efficient. And one more thing, and I'm going to stop there, it's starting by you telling people constructive feedback. I found it very easy for people to give you constructive feedback after you do. And if that's your goal, like I'm all for it. I want to hear what people have to tell me. And if I start, I find it way easier for them to tell me, oh, you also did that. Or so, as long as you're welcoming that feedback and reacting to it in a way that you're really grateful, and you can use it, that culture is starting to develop.
Sure. No, I think that's great, and I like the idea of almost like admitting a mistake and asking for an opinion to like spark that
People
conversation.
love
And
that.
yeah, I'm sure they absolutely do. But I think it is a really easy way to be like, oh, by the way, like this thing, like I'm aware, like I probably could have handled that better. Like, what do you think? Like, and what was your opinion? And then off the back of that, is there anything else that like recently over the last week? Is there anything else that you would have hoped that I would have handled differently? And I think it's a tough thing, because you look at your team, and there's no way, if there's something like annoying you, or you want them to do something better, you tell them, and then they go and improve, and they go and do things better. But like there's no way, as a leader, there's no way that you can improve if you're doing something that is annoying someone, or people feel like is not the way that works best for them. If they never tell you, you're never going to know, and you can be like jarring against each other with having no idea, because this person is just like, I wish that they would just like at the end of each week just give us an update as to where the projects are at. It really annoys me. But if you haven't created that space where people can be like, by the way, could you just send me an email once a week just to give us an update as to like how things are going, like that would make my life a lot easier. Like a lot of these decisions are really really small, and as a leader, as soon as someone tells you, you're like, yeah, like of course I can do that. It's not a big thing. But if it feels like a bigger thing to bring it up to you if you've not created that culture. I think, like you said, vulnerability is a huge thing to show that you're like open to change things, and like giving like the team like consensus and sort of decisions and things like that, I think is huge. But the biggest one is trust, like your team actually trusting you and trusting them. And kind of number six here is making use of the one-to-ones to build trust. So how do you go about building, because there's obviously a line from like a like almost like a HR point of view. You can't be like best friends with everyone on your team and everything like that. But there does need to be a level of like familiarity and stuff to build that trust. So how would you go about? Say, for example, you're in a new team or a new company, or someone new's joined your team. Like, how do you go about from like kind of first one on one? How do you go about slowly building that trust through these one on ones?
I mean, the simplest way to build trust is by saying you will do something and do it.
Mm.
And that can apply to even the smaller things. Like someone asking you a question and saying, I'm gonna come back later to you. I found that very often leaders tend to miss on that. It's like they forget about it, or there's a lot of words thrown in the air about I'm gonna come back to you, and you never do. Sorry. So one thing I've noticed that it helps a lot with building trust fast in the teams that I work with was just getting all of these little questions and tasks from people and actually coming back to them on it. Like I'm very good at note taking. And so I always come back to people, even if it's to tell them, look, I have no idea where to find this. If you want, you can talk with this other person. Um, but I find that to be very efficient. And in the one-on-ones, because I'm coming back to your question, in the one-on-ones, there's a lot of opportunities for you to get those questions or those situations to build that trust. I usually like to have a structure for one-on-ones in case the other one is not prepared. So this is very important because I believe the one-on-one should be completely owned by the team member, not by you. So that means if they have a topic, if they want to give you feedback, if they want to discuss something, they should use that time because you are showing up for them there. Like you said before, this is not them telling you what's their status update, what are they doing. This is you showing up for them, answering their questions, that their worry, and discussing their growth. And so what I like to do, it's always I make this clear from the beginning. So when I start one-on-ones with team members, I always set the expectations, even if they are implied. Most of the time they are not. You assume people know, but they don't. So what I just lay out to them like the fact what like how do I want to run these sessions, like they have full ownership about them, and if not, I will have a structure. These are the types of things that we can discuss, and it actually helps a lot. Like even saying we can use a part of it to do feedback just gives them the space to, okay, now I can do this, I don't have to make a big fuss out of it. So first is setting the expectation. Second, very important, they need to be scheduled in your calendar, even if they're gonna not happen, but they need to be there. It's one-on-ones are not something that, oh, I remember I haven't had a chat with this person in so long. So they are there. I think you can have different frequency with different people. Like when on team you have a new joiner in the team, you can have them more every like weekly, or with people that you've been working with longer, you can have them every 2 weeks. But the simple trick for a leader is never skip a one-on-one ever. So that doesn't mean you cannot reschedule them, not more than once, but never just don't show up or just tell them, hey, I have another meeting, let's just keep this. I mean, just by showing up to that one-on-one and giving them your full attention, that means not checking Slack messages while they're talking. Just by doing that already starts building that trust. Then the second one is allowing them the space to ask you the questions, following up on your word. And the third, it's being prepared. So I always have a structure, and I used to keep a note for every person in my team. So I would write there everything, their personal things, or I'm buying a house, or I'm having a kid, or whatever. So I would follow up in the one-on-ones. I would prepare in advance, and I would know what, even the small talk, what is it about, and what do we have to check, follow up on, and then go onto specific topics. One thing, if we never had if we didn't have the topic, like they didn't bring it up, one simple trick that I have for leaders, because they are always worried I don't know what to talk about, is pick one thing that happened. in the team in the past week, and ask them, well, how do you feel about it? How do you feel we handle this? How do you feel about this strategy? That's your best topic. Something is definitely gonna come up, and you can apply that to every person in your team.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've I've found from speaking to other people, a general consensus seems to be either like half an hour, like once a week, or like an hour every other week seems to be roughly the sweet spot for the majority of people,
Mhm.
for people that are direct reports. But I'm definitely guilty of not necessarily even moving them, because I know that I shouldn't cancel or move them because it's their space, but it's more from the other side. Like I've had people be like, "Oh, I don't really have much to talk about this week. Shall we just catch up next week?" And as someone that's time poor, like I will sometimes I'll grab that and be like, sure. Like, and I'm like, I've got half an hour back, like that's brilliant. I can do like all of this stuff. Whereas, like you said, actually just being like, no, let's jump on anyway. Like, and then you said you lead it and just be like, so like how was your week? Like how's the family? How's your child? Like just giving them that space and then just being like, so like in the last week, obviously like this stuff happened. Did you have any thoughts on that? And it might just jar them into, you know what, that thing annoyed me. Like, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but as we're here and as we're in this safe space that we never get to do any other time than this 1.5 an hour slot, I will bring it up. So I think that is really important, to do that. And then the other thing that I've found is, the preparation and also the follow up of one to ones. I found are so, like, if not more important than the actual one on one itself. I've spent years doing really, really good one on ones, and we would have great meetings. We'd all come out like energized and stuff like that. And I would then almost kind of like what you said, I'd be like, cool, I'll send follow up notes to everyone, like with all of the points that we've agreed. And then like I would have a busy afternoon and be like, oh, I'll do it at the end of the week. And then like I would forget about it and I would just never send them. And then I'd come to like the next meeting and I'd be like, how am I supposed to hold them accountable to everything that we've spoken about if I've not held myself accountable to even writing it down and like sending those notes out? And so being unprepared for like a one-on-one is almost even worse. Like you turn up and you're like, what do you want to chat about? They're like, I don't know, what do you want to chat about? Like just it's kind of a waste of time. And again, from someone that's time poor, like I was like, I've got half an hour meeting like every week. I don't want to spend another half an hour to an hour prepping and then another 10-15 minutes after the meeting like sending the notes, writing the notes and stuff like that. But ultimately, like if you don't do that, it kind of makes the half an hour redundant, and you like there's no point in having it if you're not prepared for it and you don't follow up and you don't hold those kind of action points. And it's the same with anything, whether it's like a one-on-one with someone or like a meeting with like an external person or something like that. Like if you don't prep, you don't follow up with it, like it kind of makes it pointless. It's the majority of the work should go into those things.
One thing that I want to point out here, I think it's just about the how many times it happens. So what you said, I mean, it's really hard to stand out to up to some standards that I always have to prepare. I always like. I think it's totally fine if you show up one day and just say, "Look, I didn't have time. I'm sorry. Let's see what we can work out on this." I actually think that builds trust, that
Yeah.
authenticity, and just like like I said before about vulnerabilities definitely helps. If you show up every week and you're like that, of course that has the reverse effect. And the same with what you said about someone telling you, okay, let's skip this one. Okay, I'm gonna have gaining half an hour. What I would do is I would cancel that one, but in the next one, this is the first thing that I will bring up. Look, I've noticed like last time, I'm not sure if you find value in our discussions. And I would like to understand how can we make it more valuable for you, because they definitely are for me, and these are the things that they are helping me with. So I've been in this situation, and I find it amazingly when people were like, oh, okay, so this is actually helpful for you. Okay. Oh, now listening to you, I actually got more ideas or what to talk about. My point is, if you don't find value, that's your point of conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, they might even feel like they're taking up your time and like it's going to be a waste of time because they don't have like important enough things to discuss. There might be
Exactly.
some stuff that you would find really important, and like, obviously you do get value out of that. So demonstrating the fact that you get a lot from it and you would like them to be there, I think is the biggest thing, right? And again, best way of doing that, like have them scheduled, don't rearrange them whenever you can. Like make them feel like that is something that is going to happen, and they have that space. And then the more they happen, the more people will think of, oh, like, I'll bring that up in my one to one. Like, and they will have more things to discuss, right? So, um,
Exactly.
conscious of time. So, like
Mhm.
last one, creating a technical vision together with your team, as well as a plan to execute it. So, talk to me a little bit. I mean, we've dipped in and out of this, I think, from some of the other points, but talk to me about creating this sort of team vision.
Yes, I mean, I think it's way easier to go towards something if it's know what it is, if you know what it is, right? So we have roadmap, we have goals, we have plans when regards to we want to build this product by this time, which comes together with product with stakeholders. But I think on a technical side, this is what the technical vision was about. For example, I think there is this part where you as an engineering manager, as a tech lead, have a responsibility, and no one else who's gonna be doing this, right? So when it comes to a technical vision, what do I mean by that? I mean you as a team get together and define how you would like your tech to look like in 6 months. That can mean architecture, that can mean tech depth, that can mean path to production, that can mean testing strategy. Like there's a lot of different things that can come into that in the technical vision, but it can also be a vision as a higher level. For example, our vision for our team is that in 6 months we're going to be able to deploy faster, or I don't know, build more products or something like that. So having something to work towards to, you might not get there, but just having it as an underlying agreement, it's gonna have an impact in everything that you do, because whatever you're gonna be building, you're gonna be thinking about, okay, do you know we have also this underlying thing? So you're going to start asking some questions, and it's going to feel help people feel like they're moving towards something. So I'm a fan of it, and it's going to bring up a lot of problems. If you think you don't have problems, these types of questions are going to open up a lot of problems. So it's going to make it easier for you. I feel way more safe as a leader when I know what the problems are than when I feel like everything is going amazing. That's where I'm more worried. And so this is a way to build that.
Yeah, for sure. We even had it from like with our company. We would sit down at the start of each year and each quarter and be like, "This is the revenue target we want to hit. Like, this is how we're going to do it." But we wouldn't share that with the team because we almost didn't want to put that pressure on them of like, "This is what we as a business want to achieve." And then over the last couple of years, we've been like, "Well, why would we not? Like, they're working towards this same thing, but." They have no idea that they're either doing a great job towards it or a terrible job towards it, and like you said, you set a target, and then if people will know if they're on track or if we're behind, and then they can bring it up and be like, by the way, like obviously you wanted to do this in 6 months. I don't think that it's possible. Like, and like they'll just be able to, and then you can have an open conversation and be like, yeah, I don't think it is. Have you got any ideas as to how we might be able to do it, or should we push the timeline back? And you're all on the same page because you're all working towards the same goal. Whereas if you're just giving people their like micro bit of the task and be like, you focus on that, and they don't really know what they're contributing to, like it's quite hard to keep them on track. Whereas I feel like everyone works together when they know what the end goal is, right? And like you said, it might move, it might change the goalpost slightly, but if you're all kind of in this thing together of like this is what we want to be doing, and that might be what you want the team to grow to, or when you want to deliver something, or like eventually like the what the company wants to do, like having everyone involved in this kind of like shared vision like helps keep them accountable for their part of it, but also be involved and be like, oh, I'm doing my thing towards our company doing this. Even so much as like a lot of people say the people that love their jobs like are passionate about it when they talk about it to their friends. Like, and if someone's talking about, oh, what do you do, like, or what are you guys like working on at the moment, they're like, oh, like I'm updating this bit on our website, or like, do you know what I mean? Like it's very granular. Whereas like people, I feel like people that are bought into a shared vision will be like, oh, we're working on like this as like a team like at the moment, and like that's when you can tell someone's like really bought in, right?
Actually, this is the secret to motivation. I actually had to teach this with stakeholders and product people to just, it was so hard to just convince them to come in and explain to my team, why are we doing what we're doing? What are we trying to build? And they hanged on with me, and they came and they explained and they saw the effect, and they never went back. It was like, okay, because it's exactly what you said. That's how you bring motivation. Everyone likes to be part of something and not just building a button. Once they understand the button is gonna do this, it has an immense, a huge impact on their motivation. So that's the secret to keep people motivated. Tell them the why.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. If anyone's got any follow-up questions about any of this, or about your course or anything like that, like, is LinkedIn the best place to find you?
LinkedIn, yes, I'm there all day.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure I tag you and everything. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll chat to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
You too.